Imagine knowing the exact year, month, and day your life is going to completely fall apart.
Right, which sounds absolutely terrifying.
It really is. Just imagine looking at a piece of paper and seeing this precise cosmic blueprint detailing your future physical illnesses or, financial bankruptcies or a period of severe mental distress.
Most people would just run the other way.
Exactly. If you're listening to this right now, your first instinct is probably to run as far away from that information as possible. I mean, nobody wants to be handed an inescapable life sentence of bad luck.
No, of course not. But that's exactly why we need to clarify what these texts actually say.
Right, so today we are staring directly into the darkest corners of Vedic astrology. We are looking at a concept called Aristha Yogas.
Yes, the infamous combinations for suffering.
These are the planetary alignments that ancient texts promised would bring ruination, agony, and just insurmountable hurdles.
But as we dig into the source material for today's deep dive, I think we're going to discover why everything modern pop astrology tells you about bad luck is, well, completely backwards.
Completely backwards.
It is entirely backward. And honestly, the level of fear-mongering surrounding Aristha Yogas in modern astrological practice it's a massive disservice to the original texts.
Yeah, they really hype up the doom and gloom.
They do, but the ancient sages were not writing horror stories. They were writing diagnostic manuals.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. This is episode 4 of our 6-part series, exploring the most critical astrological combinations, or yogas, in Vedic astrology.
You've covered a lot of ground so far.
We really have. If you've been following along, we've looked at wealth, we've looked at status, but today is all about vulnerability.
The tough stuff.
The very tough stuff. And if you are pulling up your own chart right now, or maybe the chart of someone you love, and you're seeing some of the ominous placements we're about to discuss, I want you to just put the chart down for a second.
Yeah, take a breath.
Seriously, we need to set some ground rules before we get into the mechanics.
The primary ground rule is understanding the actual definition of Aristha. It translates to suffering, misfortune, or distress.
So it's not a light term.
Not at all. An Aristha Yoga is a combination of planets that points to a structural vulnerability in a person's life.
A structural vulnerability, I like that phrasing.
Right. It is an indicator of illness, debt, mental anguish, or severe opposition. But here is the critical framing for you listening. It is not deterministic doom.
It's not a life sentence.
Exactly. It is a cosmic diagnostic tool. It highlights the specific areas of your life that require conscious management, extreme emotional resilience, and proactive preventative care.
That's the part we really need to anchor on. I want to build a working metaphor for us to use throughout this discussion today.
I love a good metaphor. Let's hear it.
So, finding an Aristha Yoga in your chart is not receiving a death sentence. It's like receiving your family's genetic medical history.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. If a genetic test tells you that you have a high predisposition for cardiovascular disease, that doesn't mean your heart is going to stop tomorrow.
No, it just tells you the structural weakness exists.
Exactly. It tells you that eating fast food every single day is a much worse idea for you than it is for someone else. It's actionable data.
It's karmic data. The birth chart shows you the raw material, basically the baseline vulnerabilities you entered this life with.
The hand you were dealt.
Precisely. But how you navigate those vulnerabilities, your lifestyle choices, your psychological coping mechanisms, your financial risk management, that is where your agency lies.
So our goal today is to map those vulnerabilities so you know exactly where your blind spots are.
Which is the most empowering thing you can do with astrology.
I agree completely. So let's get into the mechanics, because I want to know how to actually spot these vulnerabilities.
We have to look at the structure.
Right. We can't just throw out terms like structural weakness without explaining how the structure works.
Right.
In this system, where does the trouble actually live?
Where is the bad neighborhood?
Exactly. Because looking at a circular chart with 12 slices and a bunch of glyphs is visually overwhelming. Where is the bad neighborhood?
The neighborhood is everything. I mean, in Vedic astrology, before we even look at the planets, we have to look at the environment they are sitting in.
You're talking about the houses.
Yes, the houses. The sky is divided into 12 zones or houses, and when we are talking about Aristha Yogas, our attention immediately goes to 3 specific zones known as the Dastana houses.
The sources also call them the trick houses, right?
They do, yeah. Dastana basically translates to place of suffering or a difficult place.
Okay, and in the standard 12-house model, these are the 6th, the 8th, and the 12th houses.
Those are the 3.
Let's not just list what they mean, though. I really want to understand why these 3 specific slices of the sky are considered the difficult ones.
Mechanics are everything here.
Yes. So let's start with the 6th house. The texts say this is the domain of diseases, debts, injuries, and opponents. Mechanically, why is the 6th house the bad guy?
To understand the why, you really have to visualize the sky at the exact moment of birth.
Okay, painting the picture.
The 1st house is the eastern horizon, right where the sun rises. That's you. The 7th house is the western horizon, where the sun sets.
And the 7th house is the other people, your partners, the public.
Exactly. The 6th house is the section of the sky just below that western horizon. The sun has completely set there.
So it's hidden.
It is hidden from view, but it is deeply entrenched in the daily grind of the material world. Because it is positioned just before the 7th house of others, it represents the friction you encounter when dealing with the outside world.
Ah, okay. So if the 7th house is a harmonious partnership, the 6th house is the friction required to get there, or maybe the people trying to stop you.
Hence, opponents and enemies.
That makes a lot of sense visually. What about internally?
Internally, it is the friction within your own body. It is the house of disease, but more accurately, it's the house of the immune system.
The immune system, really?
Yeah, it governs the digestive tract, the part of you that breaks down foreign matter, extracts the nutrients, and actively fights off the toxins.
Okay, but if I have planets in the 6th house, the text literally says, I'm going to suffer from debts and foes. Is it just a lifetime of fighting?
Well, it is a lifetime of encountering resistance, but it's vital to realize that resistance is not inherently evil.
It just sounds exhausting.
It can be. A person with a heavily active 6th house is going to face opponents, they might take on significant loans, and they might battle acute illnesses. But the 6th house also represents your capacity to fight.
Like your grit.
Your grit, your endurance. It is the house of litigation, competitive sports, and hard physical labor.
So the 6th house is an opponent you can see. It's a tangible problem.
Very tangible.
A debt you know you signed for,
Yeah.
a virus you caught, a coworker who hates you. It's an active battlefield.
Exactly. It's an open enemy. You can strategize against a 6th house problem.
Right, you can hire a lawyer, you can take antibiotics, you can work overtime to pay off the debt. It is manageable friction.
Manageable friction is the perfect term for it.
Which brings us to the 8th house, because from what I'm reading in the source material, the 8th house is an entirely different beast.
It is the deep end of the pool.
Seriously. The text calls it the hidden or secret house. It governs long, chronic illnesses, sudden agonies, mental distress, and ultimately, the cause of death.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. I look at that and think, okay, a tangible opponent I can fight in the 6th house, but a sudden, out-of-the-blue, chronic illness in the 8th, that is terrifying.
The 8th house is widely considered the most difficult house in the zodiac precisely because of its unpredictability.
Because it's completely hidden.
Right. If the 6th house is below the western horizon, the 8th house is deeper still. It is the darkest part of the sky.
The underworld, basically.
Essentially, yes. It represents the subterranean forces of life, things that have been festering in the dark that suddenly erupt to the surface.
So a 6th house illness is catching the flu. An 8th house illness is finding out you have an autoimmune disorder that has been secretly developing in your cells for a decade.
That is the exact mechanical difference. The 8th house governs sudden transformations.
Sudden being the key word.
Always sudden. A sudden financial crash, a sudden diagnosis, a sudden accident. It is the rug being pulled out from under you.
But if we look at the structural architecture of the zodiac, there's a weird twist. The sources also say the 8th house is the house of other people's resources.
It is, yeah.
Explain that connection. How does sudden chronic illness link to other people's money?
Think about the 7th house again.
The house of the spouse or the business partner?
Right. The 8th house is the second house from the 7th. In astrological mechanics, the second house from any house represents its wealth.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the 8th house is the wealth of the partner.
Precisely. It governs alimony, inheritances, insurance payouts, and lottery wins. It is sudden, unearned wealth.
Okay, but the text makes a massive philosophical leap here that I really have to push back on.
Push away, what is it?
It says that the 8th house, this house of chronic agony and sudden death, is also the house of deep, cloistered spiritual meditation, or satana.
Ah, yes. The spiritual aspect.
I mean, I'm sorry, but that sounds incredibly convenient.
Yeah.
It sounds like a psychological cope created by ancient astrologers to make people feel better about terrible news.
Like a silver lining they just made up.
Yes. How is losing everything in a sudden crisis somehow a spiritual blessing?
I completely understand the skepticism, and it does sound contradictory until you understand the psychology of transformation.
Okay, walk me through it.
The 8th house rules the dissolution of the ego. When you are going about your daily life, making money, going to parties, your ego is firmly attached to the material world.
Right, you're just living your normal life.
Exactly. But when an 8th house crisis hits, say, a severe chronic illness that confines you to a bed for a year, what happens?
The material world is forcibly stripped away.
It is. Your social life dies. Your career pauses. You are left alone in the dark with your own mind.
You are forced inward.
You are violently forced inward. Deep spiritual meditation, sadhana, is the voluntary version of that exact same process.
Oh, wow.
A monk sits in a cave and voluntarily strips away the material world to confront the deep, hidden aspects of their psyche.
So the house represents the process, regardless of how you get there.
The 8th house doesn't care if you go into the dark cave voluntarily through meditation or involuntarily through a crisis. The function of the house is alchemical transformation.
Breaking you down to your base components.
To rebuild you. It is the caterpillar turning to liquid inside the chrysalis. It feels like death, but it is a prerequisite for evolution.
Wow. Okay, that actually tracks mechanically. It's not a coping mechanism at all. It's just two different manifestations of the exact same energy. The forced removal of superficial reality.
Exactly. Now, let's look at the final dasthana, the 12th house.
Right. The sources say the 12th house governs all types of expenditure, loss, disturbed sleep, hospitals, physical ailments, specifically crippling or confining ailments, and isolation.
The house of ending.
Yeah, and this includes literal imprisonment,
Yeah.
jail, asylums.
The 12th house is the very end of the zodiac cycle. It is the space just before the dawn.
Because the first house is dawn.
Right. If the first house is the spark of birth, the 12th house is the final letting go before the cycle begins again. Therefore, it rules endings. It rules exhaustions.
Okay, so to contrast them, if the 6th house is the active fight, and the 8th house is the painful transformation.
The 12th house is surrender.
Surrender. But the text says it governs expenditures. Does that just mean going broke?
Not just money. It means the outflow of energy. Money is a form of energy, so yes, it governs financial loss or heavy expenses. But physical vitality is also energy.
So that explains the disturbed sleep.
Exactly. Insomnia, chronic fatigue, these are 12th house manifestations because your life force is draining out. When your energy is fully depleted, where do you go?
You go to a place of confinement to recover. A hospital, a bed, a sanatorium,
You are removed from the world.
and the prison aspect.
Prison is forced isolation from society. It is the ultimate loss of physical freedom. The 12th house governs places where you are removed from the collective.
But just like the 8th house, the sources provide a spiritual flip side here too.
They do, the concept of moksha.
Right, they call the 12th house the ultimate house of moksha, meaning salvation, liberation, and final emancipation from the cycle of birth and death.
Yeah.
The house of voluntary renunciation.
The highest spiritual goal.
So if involuntary 12th house isolation is going to jail or a hospital, what is voluntary 12th house isolation?
Well, going to a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat.
Oh, isolating yourself on purpose.
Exactly. Moving to a foreign country where you don't speak the language and are isolated from everything you know. Giving away half your wealth to a charity.
Channeling the energy yourself.
The universe demands that the 12th house energy of loss and letting go be expressed. You can choose to actively surrender your attachments, which is what moksha is, or the universe will forcibly separate you from them through loss and confinement.
This is a wild framework. So to synthesize this for the listener, these three Dasthana houses, the 6th, 8th, and 12th, they are the zones of vulnerability. But they are also the exact mechanisms for human growth.
Without them, the chart is static. There is no evolution without friction, crisis, and surrender.
But knowing they exist doesn't mean you want all your planets hanging out in those zones.
Definitely not. It's a tough curriculum.
Right. And that is the perfect pivot. We've established where the bad neighborhoods are. Now we need to figure out who is wandering into them.
The actors on the stage?
Yes, because the sources are very clear that an Aristha Yoga doesn't happen just because the 8th house exists. It happens when the core architecture of your identity is dragged into these difficult zones.
This is where we get into the structural integrity of the birth chart.
Let's talk about that structure.
A chart is like a building, and it relies on 3 core pillars to stay standing: the Lagna, the moon, and the sun. If these pillars are compromised, the entire life experiences structural failure.
Let's start with the most important one, the Lagna. For anyone listening who is used to Western astrology, the Lagna is your ascendant, your rising sign.
That's right.
But how does that actually work mechanically? What is a Lagna and what is a Lord? Because the texts constantly talk about the Lagna Lord being afflicted.
Let's break down the mechanics. The zodiac is a 360-degree belt of stars surrounding the Earth, divided into 12 30-degree signs: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and so on.
Got it.
Because the Earth is rotating, a new sign rises on the eastern horizon roughly every 2 hours. The exact degree of the sign that was crossing the eastern horizon at the minute you took your first breath is your Lagna.
It's the literal dawn of your life.
Precisely. Therefore, it represents your physical entry into the world. It governs your physical body, your biological constitution, your general health, and the physical vehicle you are using to navigate this lifetime.
Okay, so if my Lagna is the sign of Aries, what does Lagna Lord mean?
Every one of the 12 signs is ruled by a specific planet. Aries is ruled by Mars, Taurus is ruled by Venus, Gemini by Mercury, and so on.
Okay.
The planet that rules your rising sign becomes the Lagna Lord. It becomes the CEO of your entire chart. It is your primary representative in the cosmos.
So if my Lagna is Aries, my physical body is represented by the planet Mars. And to keep with our architectural metaphor, Mars is the main load-bearing wall of my entire life structure.
Exactly. Now imagine taking that load-bearing wall, your Lagna Lord, and placing it in the 6th house of disease, or the 8th house of sudden crisis, or the 12th house of loss.
You're putting the foundation in a swamp.
Exactly. The text explicitly states that if the Lagna Lord goes into a dastana, it immediately signals a vulnerability regarding physical health or vitality.
Mechanically, the physical body is being forced to live in a war zone, a sinkhole, or an isolation chamber.
The structural integrity is compromised. It means the baseline physical resilience of the person is lower. They are more susceptible to physical ailments, fatigue, or accidents because their primary representative is operating in a hostile environment.
That makes total sense. Now what about the second pillar, the moon?
The moon is fascinating in this system.
It really is. In Western pop astrology, the sun is everything. You know, I'm a Leo, I'm a Virgo. But this Vedic source material treats the moon like it is the absolute center of human experience. Why?
Because the Vedic system is fundamentally rooted in human psychology and perception.
How so?
The moon represents the manas, a Sanskrit word that roughly translates to the mind, but it's deeper than that. It is your emotional landscape, your subconscious conditioning, your memory, and how you process the sensory data of the world.
So if the Lagna is the hardware, the physical body, the moon is the software, the operating system.
That is the perfect distinction. You can have a pristine, muscular, physical body, a strong Lagna, but if the moon is severely afflicted, the operating system is full of viruses.
Right, the hardware works, but the computer keeps crashing.
Yes, the person will experience severe anxiety, clinical depression, phobias, or a profound sense of isolation, regardless of how physically healthy they are.
I noticed a very specific caveat in the texts regarding the moon, and I want you to unpack it for me.
Sure, which part?
It says that an afflicted moon in childhood is a major life-threatening danger signal, physically. But we just said the moon is the mind. Why is it causing physical danger to a child?
Because children do not have a developed intellect. Up until a certain age, a child is a pure emotional sponge.
They don't have filters yet.
They don't rationalize, they absorb. If a child's moon is afflicted in the 8th house by a harsh planet, they internalize the environmental stress so deeply that it manifests physically.
Oh, wow. So their emotional distress turns into physical symptoms.
Exactly. Their immune system drops, they get chronic fevers, they suffer from strange childhood ailments. In childhood, the mind and the body are not fully differentiated.
But in adulthood?
In adulthood, the physical body has hardened, the intellect has formed, so the affliction shifts from the physical body back to the psychological realm.
That makes sense.
The adult with the afflicted moon doesn't get a fever, they get a panic attack. The text refers to this adult affliction manifesting as deep mental worry or vairagya, which is an intense, sometimes painful detachment from the world.
This distinction is crucial for you listening. It explains why a transit or a planetary period might cause an asthma attack when you're 7, but a depressive episode when you're 37.
Yeah.
The hardware changed.
Exactly. The vulnerability remains, but the manifestation evolves over time.
Which leaves us with the third pillar, the sun. If the Lagna is the body and the moon is the mind, what is the sun?
The sun is the Atma, the soul. But in practical diagnostic terms, it represents your core vitality, your inner authority, your confidence, and your skeletal structure.
It's the central battery that powers the entire system.
Precisely.
So if the sun is placed in the 12th house of loss or the 8th house of crisis, what does a solar affliction look like?
It looks like a slow drain on the battery. A person with a severely afflicted sun struggles with self-esteem, they struggle to assert their authority, and physically, their constitution is weak.
Like they just lack energy.
Yes, they might suffer from bone issues, heart problems, or a general lack of physical courage. The inner fire is dimmed.
Okay, let's tie this all together. We have the bad neighborhoods, the 6th, 8th, 12th houses, and we have the core pillars, Lagna, moon, sun.
Right.
But just having your moon in the 8th house doesn't mean your life is ruined, or it just means you have a sensitive mind.
Correct. The placement is just a vulnerability. It is dry brush and forest. It doesn't mean there is a fire.
This brings us to section 3 of our deep dive, the anatomy of affliction.
The sparks that start the fire.
Exactly. For an Aristha Yoga to actually form and cause the severe damage promised in these ancient texts, the structural weakness needs an active agitator. We need a spark. And this is where the natural malefics enter the picture.
Yes, the stress testers. In astrological mechanics, planets are categorized by their inherent nature.
Benefics and malefics.
Right. Benefics are the protectors. Jupiter, Venus, a bright moon, a well-associated Mercury. They provide cushion, grace, and expansion. Malefics are the separators. Saturn, Mars, Rahu, and Ketu. They cause friction, decay, severance, and pressure.
I want to break down exactly how these malefics operate, because the texts are highly specific about the different flavors of suffering they cause.
They all have very distinct signatures.
Right. If my moon is sitting in a vulnerable house, the resulting mental distress is going to look completely different if Saturn is attacking it versus if Mars is attacking it. Let's start with Saturn. Mechanically, what does Saturn do?
Saturn is the furthest visible planet from the sun. It is the coldest, the slowest, and the heaviest.
So it moves incredibly slowly.
It does. Therefore, its mechanical function in a chart is restriction, delay, and chronic pressure. If Saturn is the planet causing the Aristha Yoga, the crisis is not going to be sudden. It is going to be a slow, grinding degradation.
So Saturn causes the chronic joint pain, the 10-year legal battle, the slow-moving depressive fog. It's the weight of time.
Yes. Saturn is chronic agony. Mars, on the other hand, is the exact opposite.
Fast and aggressive.
Very. Mars is red, hot, fast, and violent. It is the commander of the army. If Mars triggers the vulnerability, the suffering is acute and sudden.
So Mars is the car accident, the sudden fever, the knife wound, the explosive argument that ends a partnership overnight.
Exactly. Mars cuts and burns. Saturn suffocates and freezes.
Okay, what about Rahu and Ketu? For those unfamiliar, these aren't physical planets. They are the north and south lunar nodes, the mathematical points where eclipses happen. The texts treat them as highly dangerous malefics.
Because they cause eclipses, they inherently represent the swallowing of light. They create shadows.
Okay, so how does Rahu operate?
Rahu, the north node, is obsessive, foreign, artificial, and expansive. When Rahu is the agitator in Aristha Yoga, it causes illnesses that are bizarre, difficult to diagnose, or completely psychological in nature.
Like what?
Paranoia, phobias, toxic reactions to artificial substances, or sudden scandalous downfalls. It's the chaos element.
Then Ketu, the south node.
K2 is internalization, microscopic hidden things, and severe detachment.
So shrinking instead of expanding.
Exactly. A Ketu-induced Aristha Yoga often involves mysterious viral infections, autoimmune diseases where the body attacks itself, or situations where things literally wither or shrink away. It cuts ties abruptly.
This is fascinating. The planet provides the specific weapon used against the vulnerability.
The exact flavor of the crisis.
But the texts have a major rule here regarding when these malefics are actually allowed to do their worst damage. They only destroy when the protective planets are stripped of their power.
This is the compounding effect. You need the vulnerability, you need the malefic agitator, and you need the absence of protection.
Right. The sources talk about structural weakness through combustion or debilitation.
Those are the primary ways protectors lose their strength.
Explain combustion mechanically.
Combustion happens when a planet gets too close to the sun in the sky. If you have Venus, the planet of healing and harmony, within a few degrees of the sun's intense radiation literally burns Venus up.
So it's blinded by the light.
Right. From Earth, you can't see Venus. It is blinded by the sun's glare. Astrologically, a combust planet loses its ability to protect the chart. It is neutralized.
And debilitation, what does that mean?
Well, every planet has a sign where it operates at peak efficiency, which is its exaltation, and a sign where it is completely starved of resources, its debilitation.
Okay.
If your protective Jupiter is sitting in Capricorn, its sign of debilitation, it's like a brilliant doctor who has been thrown into a prison cell with no medical supplies. He wants to help you, but he doesn't have the tools.
So if your protectors are combust or debilitated, and your Lagna is in a Dastana house being hit by Saturn, that is the recipe for disaster.
That is when you see the severe results.
The texts actually provide a series of very specific, frankly, intimidating formulas for these combinations. I want to walk through them with hypothetical charts so the listener can truly understand how this logic maps out in practice.
Let's do it. It's vital to see the architecture in action.
Okay, here is Formula 1 from the source text. An Aristha Yoga forms if the Lagna Lord is in the 12th house and the 12th Lord is in the Lagna, conjoined with or aspected by a Maraca. Let's break this down. First, what is a Maraca?
Maraca literally translates to killer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In every chart, the planets that rule the 2nd and 7th houses are given the title of Maraca.
Why the 2nd and 7th?
Because the 8th house is longevity. The 3rd house is also longevity, being the 8th from the 8th. The 12th house from any house represents its end. Therefore, the 12th from the 8th is the 7th house. The 12th from the 3rd is the 2nd house.
I see. So the 2nd and 7th houses represent the end of longevity.
That is some intense astrological geometry, but yes. So the rulers of the 2nd and 7th are the cosmic grim reapers for your specific chart.
They aren't inherently evil, but they carry the portfolio of bringing things to an end, including physical life or vitality.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's imagine a chart. Let's say someone is born with Aries rising. Their Lagna Lord is Mars. The formula says Mars goes to the 12th house, which is Pisces. So the physical body is now sitting in the house of loss and hospitalization.
Yes, a baseline vulnerability is established.
But then the 12th Lord, which for Aries is Jupiter, comes into the 1st house.
This creates an exchange of houses known as a Parivartana Yoga. The body goes to the hospital, and the hospital comes to the body.
So they are completely linked.
The energy of loss and confinement is now fundamentally intertwined with the person's physical identity. It is a profound structural loop of weakness.
And then, the final nail in the coffin. This setup is aspected by a Maraca. For an Aries rising, the 7th house is Libra, ruled by Venus. So Venus is the Maraca.
Yeah.
If Venus is glaring at this whole setup, the formula says you have a severe Aristha Yoga.
The physical body is trapped in a loop of loss, and the planet holding the portfolio of endings activates it. This would traditionally indicate a life marked by severe physical confinement, chronic hospitalization, or very fragile physical constitution.
Let's look at Formula 2. If the Lagna Lord is in the 6th and the 8th Lord is in the Lagna, let's use a different chart. Taurus rising.
Okay, for a Taurus rising, the Lagna Lord is Venus. If Venus goes to the 6th house, which is Libra, the physical body is placed in the house of open enemies, debts, and acute disease. The person is on the battlefield.
Then, the 8th Lord for Taurus, the 8th house, is Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter comes and sits in the 1st house, right on top of the physical body.
The 8th house rules sudden, catastrophic crises and chronic agony.
So the body is out fighting a war in the 6th house, and a sudden, unpreventable crisis from the 8th house drops directly onto the physical form.
Exactly. This is a classic signature for someone whose life is constantly interrupted by sudden physical accidents or sudden onset illnesses that require immense fighting spirit to overcome.
Formula 3 focuses on the mind. If the moon is with the malefic, while the Lagna Lord is in the 8th.
We see the compounding effect again here.
Right. The Lagna Lord in the 8th means the physical body is already in the subterranean zone of vulnerability. The physical vitality is compromised. Then the moon, the mind, is attacked by a malefic.
Let's say Saturn is sitting right next to the moon. Saturn freezes the mind, causing deep fear, paranoia, and depression.
So the person has a physical vulnerability, and when a physical crisis hits, their mind is completely paralyzed by fear.
They don't have the psychological resilience to endure the physical trial. It's a double failure of the system.
The mind and body both collapse under the pressure.
Exactly.
Looking at these formulas, a massive realization just hit me. An Aristha Yoga is never, ever just one bad placement.
You never.
It's not just, oh, I have Mars in the 12th, I'm doomed. It requires a highly specific compounding system of failures. You need the structural weakness, the exchange of difficult lords, and the active agitation of a malefic or killer planet.
That is exactly why I said the fear-mongering is a disservice. A single difficult placement is a personality quirk or a manageable hurdle. A true Aristha Yoga is a rare, complex alignment that breaks multiple load-bearing walls simultaneously.
Which brings us to arguably the most important question for anyone listening who might actually have one of these compounding systems in their chart.
The timing.
Yes, the timing. If the birth chart is permanent, you can't change the moment you were born, and you have this terrible structural failure in your chart,
Right.
why aren't you suffering 247? Why isn't every day a hospital visit?
Because the birth chart is a static map. It shows potential energy. But human life is dynamic.
Right.
The potential lies completely dormant until the cosmic clock strikes the correct hour to activate it. In Vedic astrology, that clock is called the timing mechanisms, dashas and transits.
Let's dive deep into this section 4, the timing mechanism. I want to spend a lot of time here because this is the absolute key to risk management. Let's start with the dasha system. What is it and how does it work mechanically?
The Vimshatari dasha system is a 120-year cycle of planetary periods. Unlike Western astrology, which relies heavily on transits, where planets are right now, Vedic astrology maps out your entire life onto a timeline governed by specific planets.
Wait, so how does it know where to start?
It is calculated based on the exact degree of the moon at your birth. Depending on which constellation or nakshatra your moon was in, you are born into a specific planetary period.
Oh, okay.
Let's say you are born into a Venus period. That period lasts 20 years. Then you move into the Sun period for 6 years, then the Moon for 10 years, Mars for 7, Rahu for 18, Jupiter for 16, and Saturn for 19.
So everyone goes through this sequence just starting at different points.
Yes, these are the Mahadashas, the major periods.
But it zooms in further, right?
It does. The 19-year Saturn period is too broad to predict specific events. So it is subdivided into antardashas, which are sub-periods, and further into pratyantardashas, which are sub-sub-periods.
She could be in the major period of Jupiter, the sub-period of Saturn, and the micro period of Mars. Okay, so how does this massive 120-year clock interact with the dormant Aristha Yoga sitting in the birth chart?
The text states unequivocally, Aristha Yogas only trigger during the specific unfavorable dashas.
Alito.
Yes. If your chart contains a brutal combination involving your 8th Lord and Saturn, you will likely live a completely normal, healthy life until you actually enter the major or sub-period of that 8th Lord or that specific Saturn.
So the vulnerability is literally just sleeping.
It is sleeping. The dasha is the activating mechanism. The text explicitly warns that major illnesses, accidents, or crises trigger specifically during the periods of the 6th, 8th, or 12th Lords, or during the period of a malefic associated with a Maraka planet. When that period arrives, the dormant yoga wakes up.
But even a sub-period can last for 2 years. Does someone suffer a catastrophic crisis for 2 straight years?
No, and that is where the second timing mechanism comes in to pinpoint the exact day or week of the event, transits.
Transits, meaning the current real-time movement of the planets in the sky today, passing over your static birth chart.
Exactly. The dasha sets the theme of the era. The transit pulls the trigger.
Give me an example of that.
Let's say you enter the difficult 2-year antardasha of your afflicted 6th Lord. You are now in a heightened state of vulnerability. Your immune system is lower. You are prone to debt.
Okay, the stage is set.
But the actual crisis, the day you get the severe medical diagnosis or the day you get served lawsuit papers, usually coincides with a harsh transit.
Like what?
Like transiting Saturn, moving slowly through the sky, crossing exactly over the degree of your vulnerable natal moon, or transiting Mars, the planet of accidents, hitting the exact degree of your Lagna Lord.
I have an analogy for this, pulling this all together. Tell me if this works. Think of the natal Aristha Yoga in your birth chart, that structural weakness, as a massive, dry, dead forest right behind your house. It is a severe fire hazard. But on its own, it's just sitting there, with potential energy.
I'm with you, I like this.
Then, the cosmic clock ticks, and you enter the difficult dasha period of the 8th Lord. The dasha is a brutal 3-month-long summer heat wave. The temperature spikes, the humidity drops to 0, the dry brush gets even drier. The conditions are incredibly dangerous. But still, there is no fire. The environment is just primed.
Exactly. The heat wave doesn't start the fire, it creates the perfect environment for it.
And then comes the transit. Transiting Mars hits your vulnerable point. The transit is the lightning strike.
That is a flawless mechanical explanation. The dry forest is the birth chart, the heat wave is the dasha, the lightning strike is the transit. When all three align, the Aristha Yoga bursts into flame.
Let me stop you there because you listening to this might be thinking, well, okay, that's a great metaphor, but how does this actually help me? A lightning strike is going to burn my house down whether I know it's coming or not.
Ah, but that's the whole point of this system, risk management.
Right, it is the ultimate tool for proactive life management. If you consult this system and you realize, okay, I have a dormant dry forest in my chart. Next year, I am entering a 2-year heatwave dasha, and in August, a lightning storm transit is passing directly overhead. You don't just sit in your living room waiting to burn.
You take action.
You spend the spring clearing the dry brush away from your house. You buy fire extinguishers. You upgrade your insurance policy.
Exactly. In human terms, if you know a severe 6th house health period is coming, you don't wait for the diagnosis. You change your diet a year in advance. You start a rigorous exercise routine to build resilience. You get a full preventative blood panel done in July before the August transit hits.
You play defensively.
Right. If a 12th house financial loss period is coming, you do not invest your life savings in a risky startup during that window. You hoard cash. You prepare.
It's just so empowering. It removes the victimhood from astrology. You aren't cursed, you're just looking at the weather forecast. But let's take it a step further. We've talked about how these yogas form and when they trigger. Let's move to section 5. Mitigation, protection, and karma.
The cures.
Yes. How do we neutralize these lightning strikes astrologically? Because the sources emphasize that the chart itself usually contains the cure.
This is the elegance of the Vedic system. It is a balanced ecosystem. Just as there are combinations for destruction, there are highly specific combinations for protection.
What are the main protectors?
The texts heavily emphasize the role of the natural benefics, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and a strong moon as cosmic shields.
But they have to be placed in specific locations to work, right? The text highlights a golden rule regarding the kendras.
Yes. We talked about the Dasthanas as the difficult houses. The kendras are the pillar houses, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses.
And angular houses.
Right, representing the eastern horizon, the nadir at midnight, the western horizon, and the zenith at midday. Because they literally hold up the physical sky, they hold up the structural foundation of your life.
The sources refer to the kendras as Vishnu Sthanas, the houses of the preserver god. They sustain life.
Mechanically, placing a heavy, protective, benefic planet like Jupiter or Venus on one of these foundational pillars stabilizes the entire chart.
So it's like a reinforcement.
Exactly. The text states that a strong benefic in a kendra provides a time-tested foundation for a healthy life. Even if you have a terrifying Aristha Yoga forming in your 8th house, a benefic in a kendra acts like a massive shock absorber.
Wait, if Jupiter's in a kendra, does it just magically fix a broken leg or stop a car accident?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't make sense mechanically.
It's not magic, it's access to resources. The Aristha Yoga triggers, meaning you still get into the car accident, the lightning strikes.
Right.
But because Jupiter is in a kendra, Jupiter represents grace, wisdom, and top-tier resources. So the accident happens, but Jupiter ensures that an ambulance is 30 seconds away. Jupiter ensures that the best orthopedic surgeon in the state happens to be on call when you arrive.
Oh, I see.
Jupiter ensures your insurance fully covers the surgery, and you heal twice as fast as expected. The crisis occurs, but the structural shield prevents ruination. You walk away with a scar instead of a catastrophe.
That makes profound sense.
Yeah.
And among these benefics, the sources explicitly single out Jupiter as the ultimate cosmic doctor.
Yes, specifically Jupiter's aspect. An aspect is a planet's ability to influence houses other than the one it's sitting in. Jupiter has a massive, expansive gaze.
A protective gaze.
The source text explicitly notes that the aspect of Jupiter on a vulnerable planet or house provides a strong protective cover that actively works to mitigate disaster.
So if my moon is trapped in the 6th house with Saturn slowly freezing to death in a depressive state, but Jupiter is sitting in the 10th house looking directly at it, Jupiter intervenes.
Jupiter throws a lifeline. It provides the sudden insight, the perfect therapist, or the spiritual grace required to pull the mind out of the dark.
But here is a massive curveball from the source material that completely broke my brain, and I need you to explain it.
What's the curveball?
We just established that malefics like Mars and Saturn are the bad guys. They cause the Aristha Yogas. But then, in the section on mitigation, the text says that having natural malefics placed in the 3rd, 6th, and 11th houses is highly favorable and protective. How do the bad guys suddenly become the cure?
This is arguably the most brilliant psychological insight in the entire Vedic system. The 3rd, 6th, and 11th houses are known as the Upachayas.
What do you mean?
It translates to the houses of growth, improvement, and overcoming. They represent our ability to exert effort, fight opposition, and eventually gain victory over time.
Right.
So imagine you're going into a brutal war zone. the 6th house. Do you want to bring gentle Venus, the planet of poetry and diplomacy, with you into the trenches?
Absolutely not. Venus would get destroyed.
Exactly. If you are facing enemies, disease, and debt, you do not want a poet. You want a ruthless, battle-hardened, heavily armed general. You want Mars. You want Saturn's cold, calculating endurance.
Oh, wow.
Having natural malefics in the Pachaya houses gives the individual the raw grit, the fighting spirit, and the physical tenacity to overcome the obstacles life throws at them.
So they fight for you.
Right. If an Aristha Yoga promises a severe illness, but you have Mars in the 6th house, Mars gives your immune system the aggressive, violent heat required to burn the virus out of your body.
And what if it's Saturn?
If an Aristha Yoga promises financial ruin, but you have Saturn in the 11th house, Saturn gives you the cold, relentless discipline to work 80-hour weeks for a decade to rebuild your fortune. The malefics become your armor and your weapons.
That completely upends the binary idea of good planets and bad planets. It's an ecosystem. The vulnerabilities are balanced by the defenses. A chart with no malefics would be too soft to survive reality.
Exactly. Which brings us to the ultimate philosophical question underlying every single thing we have discussed today. The text doesn't just give us these rules in a vacuum, it roots the entire mechanics of Aristha Yogas in the concept of karma.
Yes, I want to spend a lot of time on this because the texts mention 3 specific types of karma: Sanchita, Prarabdha, and Agami. If we don't understand these, the astrology is just parlor tricks. Break these down for us, ground them in reality.
To understand Aristha Yogas, we must understand this framework. Let's use an archery metaphor. Sanchita karma is the vast, accumulated mountain of all past actions, thoughts, and deeds across countless lifetimes.
The total storage.
Right, it is the cosmic warehouse where every arrow you have ever carved is stored. Millions of them, good and bad.
But you don't experience all of them at once.
No, you would be crushed.
Wow.
So for your current lifetime, the universe goes into the warehouse and selects a specific quiver of arrows. Let's say 500 arrows. This specific allotment is your prarabdha karma.
The karma that's active now.
It is the karma that is ripe and ready to be experienced right now. It is the arrow that has already been loaded into the bow and fired at you.
And the birth chart.
The birth chart is the exact map of your prarabdha karma. The Aristha Yogas in your chart are the heavy, dangerous arrows heading straight for you. The chart shows the illness you must encounter, the financial loss you must navigate, the mental hurdle you must clear. It is destined.
Let me stop you there, because the arrow has already left the bow and it is destined to hit me. Where is my free will? Why am I even bothering to learn astrology or manage my risk if the prarabdha karma is inevitable? Aren't I just a sitting duck?
This is the crux of the human experience, and where the third type of karma comes in, agami karma. Agami karma is the karma you are creating right now in the present moment through your conscious choices, your reactions, and your free will.
How does that interact with the arrow?
The chart shows that the arrow, the prarabdha, is going to arrive on a specific Tuesday in August during your Saturn transit. You cannot stop the arrow. But using your free will, your agami, you can choose how you receive it.
Oh, I see.
You can stand naked in an open field and let it pierce your heart. Or, using the knowledge of your chart, you can put on Kevlar body armor. You can step slightly to the left so it only grazes your arm. You can catch it in a shield.
The event is destined, but the impact is negotiable.
Exactly. The Aristha Yoga says you will face a severe financial crisis at age 40. That is the arrow. If you lived blindly, you might lose your house, your marriage, and fall into deep depression.
But if you know it's coming.
But because you exercised agami karma, you lived frugally, you saved a massive emergency fund, you cultivated emotional resilience through therapy, the crisis hits, you lose your job, but your house is paid off and your mind is stable. You experience the prarabdha karma of the job loss, but your agami karma mitigates the suffering.
So understanding your Aristha Yogas is the ultimate exercise in proactive empowerment. You are using the map of your destined vulnerabilities to make highly conscious, free will choices. It is the exact opposite of fatalistic dread. You're taking control of the impact zone.
It is the alignment of cosmic timing with human agency. You cannot stop the dasha from arriving, but you dictate the absolute condition of your mind and body when it arrives.
This has been a massive, paradigm-shifting journey today. We have covered an immense amount of ground. Let's do a recap for you listening to lock these mechanical and philosophical concepts in.
We started by identifying where vulnerabilities reside, the Dastana houses, the 6th house of open friction and the immune system, the 8th house of subterranean crises, sudden transformations, and the crucible of ego dissolution. and the 12th house of energetic expenditure, physical confinement, and ultimate surrender.
Then we looked at the structural pillars that get dragged into these zones. The Lagna and its lord, acting as the load-bearing wall of the physical body. The moon, acting as the psychological operating system, which is intensely vulnerable in childhood. And the sun, the core battery of vitality.
We explored the anatomy of affliction, detailing how an Aristha Yoga requires the compounding pressure of a structural weakness, the exchange of difficult house lords, and the active, weaponized agitation of natural malefics. Saturn's chronic freeze, Mars's sudden fire, Rahu's obsessive chaos, or Ketu's microscopic detachment. Especially when our protective planets are blinded by combustion or starved by debilitation.
We introduced the timing mechanisms, the cosmic clock of the Vimshatari Dasha system, acting as the environmental heat wave, and the daily planetary transits acting as the lightning strike that finally triggers the dormant vulnerability.
And finally, we discussed mitigation. The structural shock absorbers of benefics and the angular Kendra houses, the divine intervening grace of Jupiter's aspect, and the raw, aggressive grit provided by malefics in the Upachaya houses of growth. All leading to the understanding that these yogas map our prarabdha karma, the arrows already in flight, but our agami karma, our free will, determines how we armor ourselves against the impact.
It's just a phenomenal, flawlessly logical system. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I know you have a final provocative thought to leave us with, pulled from the more esoteric spiritual sections of the source text.
I do. And this raises an important question for everyone listening to ponder on their own. We've spent this entire hour looking at the 8th and 12th houses as zones of extreme suffering, crises, loss, and hospitalization. We've mapped out elaborate ways to mitigate and avoid that suffering. But the texts explicitly state that these exact same houses, the 8th and the 12th, are the ultimate houses of moksha, spiritual salvation, and vairagya, liberating detachment.
The ultimate liberation from suffering lives in the house of suffering.
Exactly. So here is the thought to mull over. What if the severe hardships, illnesses, and losses brought on by an Aristha Yoga are not cosmic punishments at all? Is it possible that the severe, tearing friction of these yogas is actually the universe's most efficient, albeit incredibly painful, mechanism for rapidly burning off our old karma? What if the sudden crisis that forces you to your knees, that strips away your money and your superficial identity, is the exact, mathematically precise cosmic design required to shatter your ego and force your highest spiritual evolution?
Wow. Are the obstacles actually just the path? That is a heavy, beautiful thought to carry with us. We want to thank you for joining us on this incredibly deep dive into the complex, murky, but ultimately illuminating waters of Aristha Yogas.
It has been a profound exploration of human vulnerability and resilience.
And if you thought the mechanics of affliction were intense, just wait. Because next time, we are looking at what happens when the rules of cosmic gravity in a birth chart completely invert. What happens when two terrible planetary placements crash into each other and, against all odds, cancel each other out.
The cosmic math of two negatives making a massive positive.
Exactly. In episode 5, we're going to dive into neutralizing yogas. We'll unpack Neech Bhanga, the cancellation of debilitation, and the mind-bending Viprit Raj Yoga, where extreme crises and massive Aristha-level vulnerabilities magically invert into sudden skyrocketing success. You will not want to miss it. Until then, keep looking at the stars, but remember, you are the one driving the vehicle. See you next time.